Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us. Time now for the Kickstarter, and we'll be talking about the state of the nation in light of that address that is expected to be delivered to the nation by the president later today. We do understand that Kololo ceremonial grounds will be constituted into Parliament by the Speaker, and a seating to that effect will be effected, and the president will be allowed to update the country on the state of the nation. However, the country has registered both positives and negatives across all sectors. Progress has been reported in judiciary reforms, trade, health services, sports, but concerns do remain on corruption, teenage pregnancies across the country, as well as the infrastructure, excuse me, the infrastructure projects that are either failing or not taking off. All those updates will be expected as the president rises to the occasion, I hope so, in order rather to assure the country in times of uncertainty. With me in the studio to help us understand, but most importantly, agree on what ought to be in the speech by the president and what are the likely aspects that Ugandans would love him to talk about, are Emmanuel Kashaija. He is a programs manager at Forum for Women in Democracy, particularly on the gender and economic justice desk. Most welcome to Morning at NTV, Mr. Kashaija.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, listeners and viewers.
We also have with us Innocent Natukunda. He is the team lead for the National Unity Platform Coordination Sector in Tooro region. Many thanks for joining us today. I'm also meant to understand you're an aspiring Member of Parliament for Mwenge North, that is in Chenjojo district. You're welcome to Morning at NTV.
You're most welcome.
Great. Let me use the offices of Mr. Emmanuel Kashaija. Gender and economic justice. That is something that ought to be emphasized by the president, and I'm sure you're looking forward to this particular State of the Nation address. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty, first bring us up to speed with the state of gender and economic justice.
Thank you, Chris, once again. Indeed, just to say, although you see a gentleman in front of you, today I represent the voice of women. As you can see, I work for a women's rights organization called Forum for Women Democracy.
That's right. And
the key question actually in your the key part in your question which asks is what is economic justice, before we even bring in
the gender
the gender.
Yeah.
And for me it's about a systematic system, tuning your system to make sure there is both fairer and more equitable distribution of both resources but also opportunities in your economy.
Yeah.
And so when we bring in the aspect of gender, then it is about ensuring that there is equitable distribution of both resources and opportunities for men, women, boys, and girls in the country or in our economy as Uganda. And while Uganda has made some progress on gender equality over the years, there still remain glaring gaps in this bit of economic justice, especially for women in Uganda. As some say, in Uganda and many sub-Saharan countries, poverty still has a woman's face. Even as we say, there are many people living in poverty. The fact is that there are many more women living in poverty than men. And so, today being the State of the Nation address, we would love to hear the president address specific gendered solutions that will bring women either at par or nearer to the other bit of the population. Because Chris and viewers, the question of gender and economic justice is usually, if I can paraphrase it, someone says trying to develop as a country while leaving behind women is like trying to run with one leg tied. the current statistics from the 2024 census actually reflects that women have, the gap has even grown a bit. Women actually now constitute 52% of our population. But when you look at the statistics, what portion of the resources do women control, especially productive resources like land, capital? We are glad, of course, the government has put up programs like the PDM. But again, in that PDM, the government has given only 30% to 52% of the population. So you can see the gaps in there. And today, as the president addresses us, I know some solutions can be universal for all citizens.
That's right.
But it is also very essential to talk about those solutions that target particularly vulnerable sections of your community. And women and girls in Uganda still fall in that portion of the population which has special vulnerabilities that require some special solutions, not just universal solutions.
All right. Mr. Natukunda, what's your overview of the economy right now? And what would you love, for example, that the president should not miss in his State of the Nation address?
Well, thank you, Chris, and the viewers. One thing I must bring clear to Ugandans is that the State of the Nation address we are going to listen to in the afternoon is not much different from what we have always had. This is the usual rhetoric, the same stories in different versions. Whereas we expect a lot from President of the country, it is also evident that we may end up being dragged to stories of 1980s, where me and many Ugandans were not. But if we had a pro-people president, I would expect that in the State of Nation address, we have much to do with addressing the joblessness of the youth in the country. We have much to do with the underlying infrastructure development in the country. Me from Tooro, I take about 7 to 8 hours, or even 10, to reach Kampala, which never used to be the case, and no one is speaking about it. But at the face of this country today, there is rampant insecurity that is ranging from abductions, disappearances of persons, and that began right away from 2021. There are people who have been abducted since then, and the country does not have any record of where they are, even now. When you look at also the abductions of the Eddie Mutwe's, the Noah Mutwe, recent abduction of our candidate in Hoima, I mean, these are not legal acts that are defined in the Constitution, and I want to think that the president should have come out clearly to say a word or put a way of having this harmonized. But the silence of the president when such injustices are going on gives us worry, and we do not think that it is the State of the Nation address that is going to address that. So, whereas we ought to think that it is going to be a session of addressing issues of national concern, we believe that there has been laxity, and emergent issues should have handled first. We have seen the bomb blasts in the last few days, and of course the president's son, who is also the CDF, was trying to tag this to what he described as the Noop Gang bomb threats in his Twitter handle. I think it's also time that the president, in his State of Nation address, if it is a legit address, should also be speaking to Ugandans and telling them what does he have to do with the tweets of the son, which are also threatening Ugandans. Of course, we have also seen very many amendments on the Constitution, which we believe is an attack of the dignity of the rule of law. When you look at what is happening in Kawempe and the judgment, the way it was rushed and all other processes violated, when you look at the amendment bill of the UPDF on the floor of Parliament being rushed in a way that is very abnormal, we feel the rule of law is being attacked, and the judiciary is under attack, just like other sectors in the education, in the healthcare. Of course, with education, we are looking at the poor performance in schools, lack of equipped libraries, desks, and other things, but also to mention that most of the teachers are earning below what can afford them an average living. A primary teacher is earning between 400 to 600,000. Yet the cost of living requires that someone who's providing for the family should be spending at least more than $1 million.
Okay.
So I believe the president should come out to address such a concern, so that the cost of living in the country is matching with the income levels of the citizens, both in the working and the informal sector. Okay,
gentlemen, today there is a rich rollout of perspective by the dailies with regard to the state of the nation. But let me help us, and most especially the audience, to understand the context of the State of the Nation address. Many times, the president has seemed not to actually offer any distinction in what speech he's delivering at any one point in time. When he chooses to say, I'm going to be addressing the country on important issues tomorrow, and then the media rolls with these addresses, the president's tone, the president's, the structure of the speech is really never something you can say this is what he's trying to tackle, or this is, and the State of the Nation address looks like it could fall into the same pitfall. Mr. Kashaija, what should the State of the Nation address be? Because it's an annual ritual, one that ought to bring forth mainly accountability over what has happened the last 12 months or so, and what the government is building on in order to ensure that most of those aspirations, but most importantly those within the term of presidency, are achieved. Do you think the president must be made to appreciate that, or it is okay, we continue to let him do how he wants, and after all, he's the head of state?
Thank you, Chris. Again, once again, indeed, and the media has highlighted this several times, what the State of the Nation address is supposed to be versus what it currently is. And our understanding of State of the Nation address actually, yes, concurs with yours very much. It's supposed to be an accountability address, because this happens every year, and it happens exactly 10 days before
the reading of the budget.
Before the reading of the budget.
Yeah.
And so what the president is supposed to do in the State of the Nation address is give us accountability for the previous budget we gave him. Because as a country, last year we gave him over 72.1 trillion to work with, to achieve aspirations across the diverse range of programs that Uganda has. And so the State of the Nation address, in our view, should, while it is not a crime to I was listening in earlier before I came into the studio to refer back to where Uganda to refer to where Uganda came from. But I think sometimes dwelling on it distorts the meaning of the State of the Nation address. I would be expecting to hear from the president things like the changes, for example, in the well-being of Ugandans in the past 1 year. Some indicators, the well-being of women and men and boys in the country, how many jobs have been created, and if possible, those jobs can be broken down into both gender, but also categories of how are those jobs paying. Because, Chris, one thing I worry about is every time I listen to the President's State of the Nation address, and I do listen attentively because it's part of my job.
Welcome to the club.
It's part of my job.
It's a campfire.
There's this abstract numbers especially about when it comes to, for example, industries and job creation. But sometimes the thing we also need to dig deeper into, for example, is what is the quality of jobs being created?
That is right.
Because Chris and viewers, you bear with me. Every time you drive along the Chirekanama-Namamve Mukono route, you see, and surprisingly, it's a multitude of women along that Namamve route. It's
young girls
and women. I think are for more than 90% or 80% of that crowd there.
That's right.
But we hear news coming out and that these people are being paid 3,000 shillings a day. Now, you can report as a president that you have created 3,000, 10,000 jobs. But if those jobs are jobs which are paying women 3,000 shillings a day, and they have to work to Namamve every day, maybe the country would be better off investing in these women to stay in the rural areas and farm maybe, or something better, because a job paying you 3,000 shillings a day, where you can't even afford your own transport. You see these women, especially those people who stay on the eastern road, walking from areas like Nakawa up to Namamve because they can't even afford transport.
They can't afford the transport to
get them to Namamve to work in an industry, which you're saying is you're calling such a person an investor. But is that person really an investor in the country, paying women 3,000 shillings in a day? And then there are all these cases of allegations of abuse on those women, besides the bad pay. No
workplace
harassment, sexual harassment. So for the State of the Nation address should really be both an accountability speech, but also an inspiring speech. And this particular State of the Nation comes, I think, at a unique time in our for Uganda, because this is the first financial year we are implementing under the fourth National Development Plan as a country. This is going to be the first year when the government is showing us that they can implement what they are calling their ATMS strategy of growing, beginning to the journey to grow Uganda's economy tenfold in the next 15 years. And so we hope for the president to tell us how this is going to be achieved. But not only tell us in stories, but actually show us, because lucky enough, we are a bit lucky that when the Public Finance Management Act came in 2015, it changed the cycle around. Initially, the State of the National Address used to be, it used to come before we knew actually what the budget was. But right now, the budget is approved.
By the time the State of the Nation Address is
the nation already knows what
the budget is already
about. So we hope for the president to explain to us how this budget that is going to be ready in 10 days' time is going to achieve the aspirations, for example, of the ATMS or tenfold growth. And in this tenfold growth, I'll have to say, Ali, Chris, that one thing that for me as a person disappointed me a bit, because of course the ATMS is the agro-industrialization, tourism, mineral development, science and technology and innovation. There is something, and they put in there in the strategy as a cross-cutting thing, what we call human capital development. I believe that the human capital, or your citizens, whether you have oil, whether you have minerals, your citizens are actually the biggest resource you have. Whether they should have changed the acronyms or something. When this ATMS strategy was being done, I expected to see human capital development as actually a major component of this strategy, because you can develop all you want. You can try to invest in agro-industrialization, you can tourism, whatever. But if your human capital is not up to speed,
that's right,
you will stay behind.
Okay. That's something that pretty much offers us a bit of clarity on exactly what this should be. However, the president has been very, very true to form each year, and if he shocks the nation by coming out with some deep accountability, that will be a positive. We also hope that he can go after those who are supposed to be found and reached by the arm of the law. It's important that the president addresses himself to that. But let me return to Mr. Natukunda. Recently, the president apologized to the country, apparently for mistakes that could have been made ever since maybe 1981, when the guerrilla war was launched. One of the people that were quick to respond to the president and pour scorn on the apology was the president of the National Unity Platform, Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, describing the apology as a mockery. Aren't you positive that that apology could begin the process of national reconciliation? And if the president takes advantage of that in the State of the Nation address, the toxicity apparently from the National Unity Platform that came through after he apologized should cease, and then we begin to give the president the benefit of the doubt for him maybe to detail what he was apologizing about. But do you take the apology too, or you follow your president or your principal's stance?
Thank you, Chris, for the wonderful question. I must say that the apology of the president is an illusion of hope for Ugandans to think that the president is heading to a national reconciliation. I, for one, think that if the president was apologetic, we should have seen it coming in the green light even before he came to the pulpit to read whatever they had organized for him to read. If the president was realistic in his own apology, I would have expected that there would be a plan already laid and already implemented to free, for example, all political prisoners that have been in jail since 2021 elections. There should have been a plan to check who is in the basement and also front for rights of those who have come out of the basement and are still dying in those prison hospitals. I would also have expected that the president should have begun this earlier on, not just come into a word of paper to read, but also have implemented in the past. That, for instance, if you look at what was happening in just a few months, right on from Parliament, right on from the heavy-handedness in the by-election of Kawempe, the abductions everywhere, I think we would have first seen him address that. Then he comes to the crowd to say, I am sorry. I think why this is taken light, and probably by, and of course, by my president, His Excellency Kyagulanyi, we would expect President to have done that even longer. Now, the actions would tell us that now, if he comes to confess, it is done, and Ugandans can be able to forgive him. But maybe also to clarify, it is not the toxicity of the people in the National Unity Platform, but it is a toxicity of the Ugandans. I said apparent toxicity.
I didn't say it is. Some people think it is.
No, all Ugandans are toxic. Are toxic in that manner, because what is squeezing me as a member of the National Unity Platform is what is squeezing some other young man. Over 70% of Ugandans are jobless. Our health care is ailing. Most of the people go to the hospital and do not find drugs. How do you apologize to someone who has lost a relative in the manner that there was no drug at the hospital? How do you apologize to Ugandans who send children to schools that are not equipped and also understaffed to give a future to their children? The apology should have come in a way that is more of action and more or less of words. And of course, like we have always seen the president come to camera, say this, and that is contrary to what he's actually doing. I did not really take that apology as a serious matter, and no wonder I expected him to read. The braveness of the president we have seen from the past. He's not someone you would write for an apology to come and read like he's reciting a poem. It is something that should be coming from him. He knows what he has done where. If he's apologizing to Ugandans, he should tell them that here I did this and I'm seeking for apology. Not writing on a paper and then say maybe come with Mama Janet and then start reading what and what we are doing this.
That's interesting.
I think that was more of mockery, and it should give Ugandans a little hope that the president is reconciling.
Mr. Kashaija, what's your take on the president's apology?
I'm supposed to be non-partisan, so I'll try my best to address the apology in that manner. But looking at the wider state of human rights in Uganda, and to agree with my colleague here just briefly, I think that apologies are generally supposed to come with some actions
to demonstrate that there is change.
Yes, to demonstrate that there's some change. So I think there are very many things to apologize for when you look at the state of human rights in Uganda. Yes, there is the political side, but as my colleague has said, because the government has a responsibility for so many things in this in our country, for providing health, providing education. So when you look at the number of mothers dying while giving birth in Uganda per day, when you look at the literacy rates in places like Karamoja, there are many things to apologize for, but I believe these apologies are best when they come with some kind of action to demonstrate the goodwill.
All right, thank you very much. It's time we go for a break. I hope when the president rises to the occasion of the State of the Nation address, he can take Ugandans through exactly how he intends to roll out the actions to demonstrate that he's actually sorry for some mistakes that many of us might not know. We'll be right back after the break.
From Kampala, it's now 9 minutes past 8 a.m. Stephen Mbidi on Fefe Chuga. This is morning at NTV traffic and travel update. This is one day gear, but here if you're a pedestrian or if you are a rider, you can easily lose a life or get injured because there is an operation that is being mounted here by the traffic police together with some people who are not dressed in any uniform. You can easily call them Bachifesi because they are not having any uniform that they are putting on, and some of them are just having these breakdown service vehicles that they are using to load the motorcycles that are being impounded by the traffic officers. And in some instances you find people like these ones here who are standing here. You can see, you may even mistake them to be pedestrians. You can even think that are just trying to cross the road, but they are here waiting to snatch any rider that could be crossing from any side, and they don't mind if you are someone who is in the right or you have been allowed by the traffic officers. You see him, he's just there standing next to a pole. Like you can see now, this is what I'm telling you. They can easily make you, that's how they are arresting people. They are not in uniform. They are just people, you can even say that they are either chiefs. You don't know whether they are police officers or they are just masqueraders, but they are, of course, they are working alongside the police officers. When they arrest you, they impound your motorcycle, or they can even just band you under one of these towing vehicles that are private vehicles that are not in any, they are not for police officers. As you can see, they just wait here. They act as if they are waiting to cross the road. But if you're a rider, then just have to if you're a passenger, make sure that rider who is ahead of you is you make sure that person. What's the matter?
The matter? No, I was moving to town. I was taking one of my brothers to the bus park. He's traveling. But along the way, I was just arrested because already the lights are showing that we're supposed to pass through. But it's like their system, they use a whistle, and that it's the whistle that can allow you to cross the road. But remember, the lights were on, even the whistle was blown for us to cross. But on coming this way, it happened that another border coming from this other end crossed from in front of me. So I had to stop. So that's when the police came and arrested me. So they're asking for money, for you to pick the motorcycle.
Yeah, but you have the permit, you have all the documents that confirm that that is either your bike or even you have the motorcycle. The motorcycle has even the insurance?
Yes, everything is there. Everything is there.
So what have they said not to give you the motorcycle back?
No, normally the law is that they have to get for your receipts. That is the, yeah. Then maybe if you're in a fault, I mean, if you do not have any fault, you can talk to them and they can, you can negotiate and they allow you to go with the motorcycle. Yeah.
All right. Okay. This is the situation here at Wandega. It's a crazy situation. As you can see, border riders are crossing from whichever direction, and this exactly puts the life of a passenger at risk, but also a rider. As you can see there, police officer is stopping, and then this person who is not in uniform definitely comes and then grabs the motorcycle, and then pounds it and then puts it onto the waiting truck. And these are some of the people who are here to, of course, do that act. But I think, as I wind up this, police officers, this is my personal view, police officers should act with some restraint, because you can see how people here, border riders, are trying to run away, and then passengers are also caught in the melee as they try to jump out and run away from these guys who are just waiting here to grab any motorcycle that is crossing here. It puts a life at risk. Just imagine if one of these people is knocked and then dies just in this kind of madness here as they continue with their operation. I'm not saying that operation is wrong. It's wrong to do an operation, but what I'm saying is when they do it in that kind of manner, you can put a life at risk. You can make someone get knocked who can easily lose a life as they try to run away. I imagine that kind of confusion as you saw it there as they arrest and then impound vehicles. That's how they are doing it here at Wandega. I think the traffic officers, Fande Lawrence Niwabine, the director of traffic, I think this has to be addressed, the way they handle passengers, the way they impound vehicles or border riders. I think there is something that is missing as these officers work with these other guys who are towing borders to the police stations. This is what is happening here at Wandega. Stephen Imbido Fefeso. I'll be speaking to some other people on the ground about the state of the nation, what they expect the president to be addressing, especially coming from the issues that have been happening since this year began, but also from 2024 when he had last addressed the nation in a State of the Nation address. Stephen Imbido Fefeso, handing you back to Chris Genyi in the studios. I don't know what you have to say about the kind of manner in which the police and their people, the people they work with here, how they handle and arrest border riders as well as their motorcycles. Chris, have it from me.
Put it very ably and in a very candid manner. This is unacceptable that the police uses plain-clothed men. I don't even want to describe them as operatives, because under the law it's understandable to have operatives plain-clothed as they go on to some operations or missions that are aimed at ensuring law and order or restoring security. But the conduct of the police in how it onboards these individuals is what is questionable, and it's not something we are going to appeal to the police to change. We just have to ensure and be very, very categorical. It's a shame on the police, and the fact that it's even happening is right in front of Wandega police station. Most of these guys who masquerade as operatives are not actually operatives. We know that. They are boys who are picked and in what is some kind of makeshift collaboration. They do these acts, they basically violate the rights of the average Ugandan. I mean, at the end of the day, if somebody, for example, a rider has the permit and is not violating any law, why then are the riders required to pay money for the release of the motorbike? That means you are saying, we wasted our time to hold you, but we actually don't want to waste time. So be able to come forth and pay something. I think that's a shame on the part of the police. But most importantly, in line with the discussion that we are having today, that is the state of the nation. We have security operatives goons who are onboarded to do operations, and they do not at any one time have the courtesy, the decency to respect human rights. A person who has no experience, no training on how to handle a law offender acts in a way that either brandishing his own bravado, which is really something that we need addressed. Maybe the president will talk about it a little bit later when he addresses the country. But let's go to Entebbe, where my colleague Ivan K. Walinyolo is standing by, and he is standing in front of stalls, and the ladies there are up some business, and that is of course very representative of the economy as we speak right now. Let's see what we have from Ivan K. Walinyolo.
Well, it's still morning at NTV. This time I'm coming to you from the streets of Abaita Babiri here in Katabi Town Council, Wakiso District. Just like you're seeing in my background, the street vendors are here to do their job. A lot of food supplies. Many of them are preparing ahead of tomorrow, which is Eid, and they are buying the foodstuffs for their families. But of course, we know the fact that the president is likely to address the nation today in the afternoon. But we want to ask the local people here, what do they expect out of the presidential nation address? What do the bagala kuuliriza mukulembeze nga yogera ku kibichi byennyini bye bagala okuwulira omukulembeze nga yogerako olunaku olwaleero eri eggwanga? Katandika nono omukyala omu ku basuubuzi beesanze wano atubuulire gwe biki by'oyagala okuwulira nga omukulembeze w'eggwanga ayogerako mu kwogera kwe okw'olunaku olwaleero. Tandike n'erinnya lyo.
Neyanza nnyo ssebo.
Ojatunula eri mu kamera.
Nze Namatovu Proscovia Kasozi. Nze naali agadde President Museveni olwaleero kyayita State of the Nation. Ategeere nti abantu abawansi tuli baavu nnyo, obwavu bungi nnyo mu bantu. School fees yeeyongedde, ssente empitirivu nnyo amasomero gezisaba. Olwaleero omwana okufuna quality education olina okugenda mu ssomero nga lya bbeeyi. UPE schools teriyo quality education kubanga ebikola temubibawa abasomesa. Yali badde omusomesa asobola okusomesa omwana wange naye ebikolayo tebiriiyo. Ekyokubiri, amalwaliro gaffe nago temuli ddagala. Ogenda mu Grade B hospital wano eyitibwa Regional Referral Hospital naye nga teriiyo ddagala. Basawo mwebali naye eddagala teririiyo. Ekikwewuunyisa tulinaanye National Medical Store. Olaba olwaleero nga bookya eddagala naye nga gwe wagenze mu ddwaliro gy'ofuna eddagala ly'omusujja nga teririiyo. Ate on top of that, mu ddwaliro mulimu pharmacy ezijjudde batunda butunzi eddagala tetumanyi oba ekyo kyeki tetukitegeera. Maliriza ne kino ssebo, muno Mugombolola y'e Katabe mulimu oluguudo luli wali Kisubi luleeta amafuta, tuwulira amafuta ga president ne mutabani we, naye oluguudo lwagaana okukolebwa. Emmotoka nnene zitutomera, lufunda lulimu ebinnya. Sebo President Museveni sooka okola oluguudo olwo amafuta go gatambule bulungi.
Kale ankyali wano ku streets z'okubayita ababiri okwogerako n'abantu abali wano batubulye ebiki bye basuubira mu kwogerako omukulembeze w'eggwanga. Sebo tutandike n'erinnya lyo otubulye na biki by'oyagala omukulembeze w'eggwanga ayogereko mu kwogera kwe okw'olunaku olwaleero.
Sebo nze George William Kakooza, ebbanga erisoba myaka 10 mbadde mu mawulire nga mpeereza abantu b'Entebbe eno ku CBS. Nolwekyo nasazeewo n'abantu b'e Katabi ne mbasaba nze gye mbakulembere ku Gombolola y'e Katabi. Nkimanyi bulungi okwogerako omukulembeze w'eggwanga kuva mu ssemateeka. Ennyingo y'ekikumi akawaayiro akasooka kalagira omukulembeze w'eggwanga okola State of the Nation address okubuulira eggwanga biki byasuubira oba ebikoleddwa eggwanga bye lirina okutambulirako. Naye ffe tuwulira bulumi bwereere nga bannayuganda. Omukulembeze w'eggwanga atulimbye ebbanga ddene. Buli mwaka akola okwogera kwe yakola 2024 tetukusuubira kwawukana kwagenda okukola olwaleero. State of Nation address tusuubira etuyambako okukyusa ebyo ebiganyo tambula obulungi. Naye kye neewuunya omuntu ajja wano n'emitwalo 2 nga azze kugula bintu wano mu katale, azze kugula enva, emmere n'ebisiika, addayo na bisiika byokka, emmere nga tagirina n'enva nga tagirina, kati agenda biri atya n'olwekyo ffe tusuubira omukulembeze w'eggwanga nga bw'azayogera ku bbeeyi y'ebintu ebbeeyi y'ebintu ekyuke eddeeyo mu mbeera esobola okubeezaawo munnayuganda ekyo kyekisooka ekyokubiri omukulembeze w'eggwanga yatwetondedde kati ffe twebuuza yeetonze ki nga teyatunyonyodde biki bye yatwetondera nze mu kwogera kwensuubira kyalina otuyamba kiri kimu atubulire nti bannaye bye neetonze kino ekiwamba abantu kino enguudo embi kino amasomero amabi kino amalwaliro amabi bye nina okutandikirako oba si kyo biba bimulemye atugambe bannaye eggwanga lyammwe liiryo ndibawadde emyaka nadye engikulembedde limala
nkyayogerako wano n'abantu ku street z'okubayita ababiri batubulire pulezidenti agenda kuba ng'ayogerako eri eggwanga olunaku olwaleero bikimwe bye mwagala ayogereko ebibakwatako bebibaluma abantu ba wansi tandika n'erinnya ssebo
erinnya Kikomeko Hassan youth mayor Entebbe municipality mukulembeze w'abavubuka mu kibuga ky'Entebbe omukulembeze nga ye tuyinza okuba twogera wano naye ng'alina ebibye byaleese ku lupapula naye ebyensuubira ekisooka byayogerako emabega nga tebinnaba kutuukirira muno mu Ntebe ensonga y'abavubi bonna abali ku myalo abavubi abali ku myalo bakyabakuba emiggo ze nkikirira abavubuka omuli nga abavubi abasinga obungi kati tebakyakola amagye gakyali ku nnyanja bakyakuba abantu emiggo n'obalaba emiggo ng'eno yonna nga gisaze ekyo musaba addemu akyogereko atangaaza eggwanga pulezidenti waffe otugambe nti mutuufu kaakati amagye ebyennyanja byakomawo abantu baddemu bakole balekole abo bakuba emiggo ekyokubiri UDCL amasanyalaze gagenda nze wensula amasanyalaze buli kaseera gaba gagenda osasula sente batusobedde kati tujuliza n'okujuliza umeme singa yasigalawo waffe amasanyalaze waffe gati tegagenda bwe gato ekyo nayo nsonga Museveni pulezidenti waffe Museveni yandibadde agikola ki agyogerako ensonga ey'okusatu abavubuka tebalina mirimu sirowooza nti ekintu ekyokukwata ssente ne baziwa abavubuka kikulu yes bagenda zibawa bagenda kuzirya naye tuba traininze tutyo okuba nti bakozesa ssente ezo mu bulungi bwazo okumpa ssente nga sina kyemmanyi kigenda okutandika bizinensi abagaba ssente naddala PDM ki mubasomese bamanyi wawe bagenda oteeka ssente zitambulire mu makulu amatuufu oli atwale ssente ng'akimanyi naye abasinga ekyamazima kiri PDM tebagenda kumuzza abantu bamututte ate banaku ddala tebali agenda kuzza 10 n'eki ekyo nkusuubira okyogerako mukama wange
kale nkyali wano ku nguudo oba ku street z'okubayita ababiri okunyumyako n'abantu ba wansi nga tugamba nti omukulembeze w'eggwanga agenda kuba ng'ayogerako eri eggwanga olunaku olwaleero naye biki bye mwandyegombye okuwulira mukogera kwe oba biki bye mwagala ayogereko mukogera kwe tutandika n'erinnya lyo otubulire ssebo
neyanziza nnyo erinnya lyange yenzeru bwama Stewart ndi mutuuze w'Entebbe municipality nze nsuubira mu kwogerako omukulembeze w'eggwanga bw'aba kituufu ng'akyali mukulembeze wa ggwanga nga ne ssemateeka akyamuwa amaanyi mu article y'ekinana ne mu article y'ekinana ngetwaga nti pulezidenti alina okuba nga waali era ye fountain of honor kituufu waba ye fountain of honor kyalina osookerako kwe kuvaayo okukoma ku mutabani we akola nga CDF essaawa zino omuntu aweereza mu kitiibwa nga bwe kityo bw'obanga oli pulezidenti nga kituufu olina amaanyi mu ggwanga lino tosaana kubanga omuntu oyo akyali mu ofiisi eyo okukwata abantu n'okubatulugunya olw'okubanga ba NUP n'abakunyuulako enviiri n'okwogera nti ali mu bayigiriza lunyankole kikolwa kya biseera bya dda nnyo pulezidenti waba kituufu pulezidenti ng'alina n'obusobozi obwagala okuba ng'aweereza obanga abadde aweereza abantu ekyo abasooka okukola ajjewo ekyokubiri obunkenke obuyingiddewo wawulidde byabadde namugongo obw'okutta abantu obwa bbomu n'obutujju asaana aveeyo alabe ng'akyogera kubanga omuduumizi w'amagye omwogezi w'amagye ayogera kirala nti nno ffe ng'abajja n'abamagye twakutte abantu bano abadde bagala okukola obutujju ne tubatta kyokka bw'olaba akavidiyo ko kakulaga kintu kirala abantu bamanyi kigenda mu maaso beetagisa baveeyo babeere n'olulimi lutya lumu ekyokubiri twagala eddembe tugenda mu mwaka gwa kalulu buli muntu akiraba ebyobina by'obufuzi nga beffe aba NUP tetukkiriza kubanga tweorganizinga ffe nga ba NUP tukwatiddwa ebbanga ddene nawana Entebbe wakirabye bulungi nga tuteekateeka abavubuka baffe bazze ne batuyoola ekigo eddungu ne batusiba okumala olunaku lulamba paka ne leero tukyaddayo ku poliisi naye ng'ebibiina ebirala bituuza aba NRM batudde wa Ssentabire asaana aveeyo akyogere kuba wano mu ntebe olabe waffe ebipande byaffe byonna naba bisazeeyo bye twesimbyewo by'ebibiina byabwe bya NRM byolaba byokka byokka so kisaana aveeyo batekewo embeera ennungi abantu basobole okubeera nga bavuganya ate nga twesimbawo bulungi
kayogeko nono njagala nguzeeko ku nnyaanya naye atubuulire maama ono just seconds nga 3 maama otubuulire omukulembeze w'eggwanga agenda kwogera olunaku olwaleero naye kiki kye mwandiyagadde ayogereko ekibaluma ng'abantu ba wansi mwe ng'abantu
ekituluma tewali kituluma
kale ku lwakadde sigenda kubeera nga nsukkawo awo njagala kusooka nkomewo mu studio eyo tweyongere oba tugende mu maaso ne Morning at NTV naye ebyo bibadde birowoozo by'abantu bye baagala omukulembeze w'eggwanga awulirize tusuubira nti singa eddoboozi lituuka n'abyogerako kiba kibakola bulungi nnyo kankomeyo eyo mu studio gye muli.
Okay, Walunyolo speaking to residents and traders there at Baita Babili Market on their sentiments in as far as the president's anticipated State of the Nation address is concerned. There is one, the very last one, I think she has absolutely no problem. And well, I think it's good still to understand that not every person is actually going through what you could be going through. In her state, she is comfortable and she has nothing to tell the president. Maybe it was the fright of the camera, but again, I won't throw around any speculation on that matter. But let me return to the studio and continue the conversation on the president's State of the Nation address expected later this afternoon. You heard the sentiment of some of the residents in Baita Babili, and it is something that is replicated across the country and in many areas. The gentleman who spoke last was very specific, especially when it comes to how political parties are allowed to play politics. When the National Resistance Movement has a meeting, a rally, or anything that borders on politics, they are allowed to do that business. When any other opposition party, for example, JEMA or Democratic Party, there are issues, confrontations with the police. Nope, you are in the thick of it most of the time. But again, people are concerned that the National Unity Platform is particularly provocative when it comes to sometimes how it conducts a business, and maybe it should conduct business in a little bit more orderly way, so to speak. The alleged hooliganism that many of the activists and supporters exhibit during the rallies is something that puts the police on the edge. And the fear is if you let it happen, it emboldens others to also be rowdy, and you don't know where that ends. And it's what the police wants to be able to put to a halt. You don't agree, I see it in your eyes, but isn't it something that you should agree with?
Well, Chris, thank you, and the viewers. The truth of the matter is that this regime is so fearful to anything pertaining the operations and activities of the NUP. And this is not about the nature in which they are conducted. It's about the appealing message that the NUP is giving to Ugandans, and also giving them hope. It rallies many Ugandans to come to gatherings and other activities, not because they have come to do harm or even maybe to practice some kind of hooliganism, but it is because of the message of the party and also the top leader, which gives Mr. Museveni a threat. You know, Chris and the viewers, this government has lived on propaganda, on politics of malice, politics of propaganda, where they want to bring in tribe, they bring in all kind of things to make sure that the image of the NUP is tinted, so that Ugandans can feel that it is a worst alternative they can opt for. But the truth eventually beats it all, and proves it. I hosted Chagulanyi in Tooro sub-region last week. We had one of the most peaceful engagement and an activity that almost attracted thousands of people from each corner of the sub-region. If NUP was a composition of hooligans, like they want to term it in their propaganda, then probably it would be the news story of how things in the market were vandalized and all that kind of thing. But because the government of NRM is so much afraid of the NUP and looks at its message to be appealing to many Ugandans to agree with them, they think that limiting chances, limiting them space to preach to more people is the approach they can use to really shut them down or even demotivate anyone who is willing to give them support. Oh. But of course, from what we have just heard from the field, you realize that the country is going into a session of lawlessness, whereby the unwritten laws are overtaking the written laws. Someone who is supposed to come in uniform and identify themselves as maybe a security officer to conduct an activity is choosing to only come in just bare casuals to conduct an operation that is supposed to be conducted by a uniformed person. When you hear from the people of the fisheries, you realize that Uganda is not for Ugandans. People are being marginalized to even operate in the natural resources that God gave us as a country, and we would be taking pride to be part of the Pearl of Africa, citizens of the Pearl of Africa. But now you realize that we're being witch hunted in our own country, which now is also leading us to modern slavery. And this is one thing that people are not talking about. The president should also address modern slavery. We are looking at very many young people who have documents, leave the country to go and do casual jobs.
We'll be tackling that issue a little bit later. I just want to preempt the discussion.
Thank you so much.
Allow me engage Mr. Kashaija on his reaction to what you just heard, as brought to us by Ivan K. Walinyolo, and the quality of services, for example, in schools. There was a lady who said UPE is absolutely in shambles. There is no quality education there, yet where Ugandans see as offering quality education, the schools are really expensive. Then the others spoke about the fact that maybe we've already begun regretting the departure of Umeme. Not that Umeme was doing a good job, but EDCL is doing a far worse job.
Thank you, Chris, once again. I think we've had some quite diverse and variable insights from the people in both Wandege and NTV. But just as my colleague here was saying, especially there is an issue on how Ugandan enforcement of laws in Uganda is handled. And it affects both the political and even just civil landscape. Because it especially manifests on the political scene, but even in normal civil matters, the way sometimes police conduct themselves is a bit wanting. So someone comes to you to arrest you, and they're saying under the vehicle. But a proper arrest, for example, is supposed to be, first of all, an introduction of who they are,
and the reason of arrest,
and the reason of arrest,
and a show of an arrest warrant,
and a show of an arrest warrant. So even many times when the police says maybe people are being hooligans or are resisting arrest, it's because even the arrest itself is done in the wrong manner. Because I think the Ugandans deserve a state where that process is followed, and then if a person resists after that, you can say a person resisted arrest. But someone simply telling me go under the pickup is not an arrest. That's not an arrest.
That's an abduction.
By our Ugandan laws. But also, of course, someone in NTV touched on the issue of the political space in Uganda. We are heading towards a very uncertain and critical time in our country, an election that looks to be having heated temperatures. And I think also one of the areas where the government of Uganda has kind of fallen short on its mandate is about public awareness, even of laws. Because maybe then the public will be able to defend their rights. Especially if I can refer, for example, to our law enforcement usually refers so much to the Public Order Management Act, POMA. But our colleagues here in parties, especially on the opposite side of government, yes, they usually stopped so much. But actually, every time I hear police officers revert to violence and quote POMA, but they don't quote POMA in its true form. Because, for example, not many citizens, I don't know whether police officers know and just ignore it intentionally. But, for example, Section 5 of the Public Management Act, for example, actually in itself there, does excuse registered political parties as long as they organize their structures. They actually don't have to write anything under the Public Management. That
is right.
Yes.
They don't have to ask for permission.
No. But and especially Section 5 talks about registered political parties in Uganda. So if you're a registered political party and you're organizing your structures, POMA actually does not affect you. You're supposed to you just notify for people to provide security. So and as we go into the period of election, I think it is very critical today during the State of the Nation address for the President to address issues around the fundamental freedom of association. Because it seems right now like Ugandans are being hardened a bit in temperature election. You're safe in one corner, in the other corner you're not safe, which affects the freedom of association. The freedom of association is a fundamental right. And talking from Chris, just talking briefly from where my background of coming from the women's rights perspective, sometimes it's not that we see kind of, especially women, laying back from participating in some of our leadership and elections, because women are more susceptible to violence. First of all, they are more fearful of violence because they can face multiple forms of violence. We have had allegations flying around of people being raped in custody. And so many times when the environment is this way, many women will hold back because abuses such as rape, even just sexual harassment during arrest, stripping, it's
unacceptable.
It is unacceptable, but also it will inhibit many people from participating, but especially women, because there are unique forms of violence which women suffer, which men do not suffer. Sometimes a man will worry about being raped in police custody. although again last year we had some allegations flying around of that happening. But but for women, I think these things like sexual harassment during arrest and stuff, these are issues which need to be addressed. These are fundamental human rights issues.
Interesting there. There is what I want to describe as a silver lining on this very dark cloud. And we saw this happen when the executive director, the exact designation escapes me, that is the Human Rights Commission boss, and writing that letter to the CDF, the language and the tone was something that emboldened human rights activists and players, that maybe there was an opportunity to begin to shift to accountability and to see many of these institutions as actually biting and not only backing. Do you have hope in that new trajectory when you see the Human Rights Commission beginning to put its feet on the ground and speak about the violations or any abuses that are being perpetrated by any officer of government?
Thank you, Chris. Whereas I appreciate the efforts of such institutions that are champions of human rights, I got to also think that they are fulfilling their obligation, which may not really do much to the environment we are living in. First of all, Chris, and the Ugandans at large, the government of today wants to impart fear in each and every Ugandan, including those in institutions, to the extent that even those who are heading institutions operate in fear. There's a new kid on the block, which is the basement. You do not know who qualifies and who is going there next. It could be you who is heading the institution that is supposed to go there. Whereas you looked at we all looked at the letter from the boss of the human rights, but also saw the reply from the CDF, trashing it and calling, terming it as a stupid document. that should never be sent to him in any way or any other time. So this gives me much worry, and it should even worry more Ugandans to think of an alternative. That since we have the obligation to exercise our rights as the citizens of this country, let us mobilize and cast what the National Unity Platform has termed as a protest vote. That next time they're trying to organize elections, we come out clearly and say, this is my mandate, this is my tool, I can use to overturn things and have a better government that can be maybe listening and also implement the rule of law in its fullness, not this method of government that is duplicitous and pathological in lying.
Gentlemen, many thanks. Emmanuel Kashaija, Gender and Economic Justice Program Manager at Forum for Women in Democracy, and Mr. Emmanuel Innocent Natukunda, lead for the NUP cohort or legion in the Tooro sub-region of Uganda. It's been a pleasure having your perspectives on the State of the Nation address. Let's now go to Gotland at Makerere University, where my colleague Stephen Mbide is standing by.